Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Autopilot's webinar for the week with Effin Amazing called The Ultimate Growth Stack. Thank you for joining us, whether it's morning here or afternoon if you're in the East Coast of the US. Really excited for today's webinar. We'll be sharing real insider insights on what's been working for companies in the data sharing, automation, and analytics world. And pleased to have Dan McGaw here, who's a real expert in the space. Before we get started, a couple quick housekeeping items. First, I've already been chatting with you, but you can ask questions at any point in Zoom. We may stop, although Dan's got a packed presentation, so we'll probably take questions at the end here. Secondly, we will be sending around a high-def recording. That should be completed by tomorrow, so look for an email follow-up to the event. And lastly, we do have a couple of special offers at the end of the webinar, so hang tight through to the end. So with housekeeping behind us, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Guy Marion. I'm the CMO and head of growth here at Autopilot, the customer journey automation company. And I'm delighted to be joined by our partner, Effin Amazing, Dan McGaw. Dan and his team has been using Autopilot as well as a bunch of other tools to work with clients of ours, and I'm excited to be with Dan today. So, Dan, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Great. So Dan, just a quick background on Dan. Dan's an award-winning entrepreneur and speaker. I've personally seen him speak at a number of events this year at Growth Marketing Conference and elsewhere. He's the founder and CEO of Effin Amazing, an analytics and growth consultancy company that helps product and marketing teams get data-driven. He's also coined as one of the original growth hackers. He was a big player at Kissmetrics as their VP of marketing. And you can find him pretty much everywhere online on Twitter at Daniel McGaw. So, Dan, where are you right now?
I'm in our offices in Orlando, Florida.
Great. And before we get started here, just a quick personal thing. I know you're a prolific Little League baseball coach, and I also know you're applying stats prowess to your teams. Have you got the team? Are you using Moneyball tactics to get your entire team batting over 300?
Absolutely. It's actually been really awesome to take the statistics knowledge that I have from the tech industry and apply that to Little League baseball. It's been a lot of fun, and our batting order rocks. So we're doing great.
Great. Question I got to ask. Our last webinar intro had the subject line saying this webinar would be effing amazing. We got some colorful feedback from some of our audience. How did you come up with the name?
Yeah, it's a great question. My wife actually named the company. I'm very well known for saying the word amazing. That's just who I am. And I'm also known for swearing. So my wife was watching TV one night. We were trying to figure out what to name the company. We knew it had to have amazing. She saw a TV show called Effin Science on normal public television. So she said, call it Effin Amazing. And I thought it was the greatest idea ever. And it's been awesome ever since.
Great. That's interesting. Well, if public TV can do it, I guess it defends our decisions to do it too.
Right.
Another question. So Kissmetrics was a powerhouse. It really sort of democratized funnel analytics for marketers. You know, we've all followed the blog and known the service over the years. What sort of inspired you to leave there as VP of marketing and start your own consulting firm versus applying everything you do in another high growth startup or a big brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So while working at Kissmetrics, I still lived in Orlando, and I was traveling for at least a week a month to San Francisco and other places. So I really ended up leaving Kiss just because I was a little burned out from the travel schedule, wanted to hang out with my kids. And then when I left Kissmetrics, I actually worked on one of my other companies for a little while, doing some CEO for a company called Fuelsy. And during that process, my wife told me to do some consulting to make some money for Christmas. And I was like, sure, I'll check it out. And fortunately, it just spiraled out of control. And we started getting a lot of clients. It was never meant to be, hey, we're going to do a consulting company. It was something that just accidentally happened. And now I've been doing it for nearly 3 years. And I really like it because I get to work on a lot of different challenging problems that are focused across a lot of different verticals. So it's a little bit more fun for me if it's my personality rather than focusing on just one thing, which to me sometimes gets a little mundane.
Got it. And has automation always been a focus of yours, or, you know, selfishly from our perspective, when did you first get introduced and start working with Autopilot clients?
Yeah, so we started working with Autopilot about 1.5 to 2 years ago, and we really liked the tool. We've had a lot of opportunity to work with a lot of automation tools. I've been sending mass emails since '99, so I've had a great experience with emails. But one of the biggest things about Autopilot was its interconnectivity with other tools and being able to work with the ecosystem. Compared to a lot of the big automation tools, they're kind of siloed. They connect to one or two things, but they're really bulky. Autopilot doesn't have that.
Got it. And about your clients? Like, how experienced or technical are the clients you're typically working with?
Great question. A lot of our clients are pretty technical, but there's another half of them which are not technical at all. So it really does face the gamut. Ultimately, we're brought in to solve a problem. Typically, we're building out a marketing stack, building out the operations and the strategy. But some clients are more technical than others, but we just have a good wide range of clients that it really fits both sides of the table.
Perfect. All righty. Well, let's go and dig in. Over to you, Dan.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And for everybody, I just want to make sure that you can see my screen correctly. If you can drop that in the chat, that'd be awesome. Please feel free to ask questions. We'll get to some of the more important ones at the end, and some we'll try to answer through text. So if you have any issues, definitely let me know. But as Guy said, I'll send out a high-def recording of this tomorrow because I am going to go through this pretty fast. There's a lot of stuff to cover. I want to make sure you guys get all of my special hacks and can use that. So let's dive in. Now, right now, we're in essence at the beginning of a Stackapocalypse. In essence, what's happening is there's just so many marketing, sales, developer, and support tools that are coming onto the marketplace that we're growing just so fast that it's really, really hard to manage. Now, if we look at back in time about how this has really happened, Chief Martech started doing a study on how many martech tools there was per year. Back in 2011, there was 150 or more. But once we got to 2013, there was 350. By 2014, we had nearly 300% growth and had over 1,000. Now, if we look back just a few years, we have over 2,000, over 3,500. And for 2017 alone, we're looking at over 6,000 different tools in that martech stack. Now, all of these tools are able to keep themselves in business simply based upon the growth that they all see from each other. But this is a really, really interesting time. We just have so many different tools that we can use. But one of the most important things is as new tools come, it's really, really hard to take into consideration change. When you do any type of change in these types of things, it's going to be really scary. I even get scared whenever there's going to be a chance that we're going to change something, because next thing I know, I have broken data. I had issues with data consistency. I'm now firing off emails with the wrong merge tag. Always really, really troubling stuff. Now, I want to know, how many tools are you using in your day-to-day stack? I'm going to launch this on the screen really quick. If you can just do me a favor, let me know how many tools do you have in your day-to-day stack that actually you work with. That'd be super, super helpful for the rest of this conversation. I'm going to let this run for about 5 more seconds, so don't waste your time. Okay, make sure you get that answer in. See all these responses coming in, so good job. Now, what I find to be really interesting is that there's a lot of tools in our stack. If you look at your website, these tools all load and cause load issues. So sometimes you want to make sure that you understand how many tools you have and how do you reduce that. Now, I see we got a bunch of responses here. I'm going to share these results. What's great to see is most of us have between 1 to 10, right? Now, this is a pretty good number because that's going to help you with your site and reduce issues when you have change. Now, I have another great poll, which I want to ask. How many tools do you think are in my stack, right? Now, I obviously work in this industry. I do a lot of different stuff. How many tools do you think I actually have in my stack? This is a great question. Now, if we can get somebody who answers right, I'd like to give you a high five, but you're a little far away. So I definitely want to see what we get. I'm going to leave this up for 5 more seconds, so don't waste your time and get your answer in. There we go. I'm going to end it. Good job, everybody. Well, this is really awesome. So I think this is kind of interesting because most people say between 1 to 10, right? I think that's a little funny because if you know me at all, you know I have way too many tools in my stack. Just in my day-to-day stack, I use over 29 different tools. Now, this is really interesting because every one of these tools needs to figure out a way to work together to make it in my stack. Now, what I would say is that the problem is, especially in other people's stack, is that most of these tools are actually siloed, especially between sales and marketing, which is something that's really important. We never want to live in a world where our tools don't talk together. Now, let's talk about the ultimate growth stack, right? We've covered a little bit about what you have, what I have, but let's talk about what this ultimate growth stack should look like. The number one thing I have to stress is that you need to choose tools based upon integration. It's critical for anybody on your growth team. So we definitely want to make sure that you focus on your integrations. Now, this is our ultimate growth stack, right? This looks very, very complicated, but also very, very simple. If you think this is complicated, you definitely need to reach out. Now, I'm going to ask a quick question to see how many of you already use these so we can understand what we need to talk about more. Now, Google Tag Manager, a wonderful tool. We also have Segment up there for data piping. We have Clearbit, which you'll notice is connected to Segment. And once again, notice Autopilot, Salesforce, Amplitude, and Zapier. Now, feel free to jump into that poll and answer this question because it's really, really helpful. And I noticed a typo. I actually spelled Autopilot on that one. I misspelled that. Sorry about that, guys. But this is interesting. If you notice, lots of people I'm seeing respond right now have some tools that are really important. I'm going to end the survey really quick and share those results. But Google Tag Manager and Zapier by far are the winners, right? This is super, super good to see because that means you're taking your stack seriously. You're already trying to make sure that you can deploy code on your site without using a developer. You're connecting tools in a hacky way using Zapier. I see a lot of us already use Autopilot and Salesforce, which is great to see. Not so many on the Segment or Amplitude side, even the Clearbit, but we'll talk about those tools and see if we can change your mind in just a minute. Now, we're going to jump into a description of each of these tools really, really quickly. So let's get going fast, okay? Now, the first thing I want to stress is Google Tag Manager. This is one of the best tools on the internet right now, and the fact that it enables you to deploy code on your website without ever having to contact a developer. If you can get your engineers to add this to your website, you can add any JavaScript to your website or even custom tracking codes without having to bug the development team. This is extremely critical for anybody who's on a growth team who needs to deploy things quickly and not have to bug a developer. So definitely check it out. Now, another tool which I recommend is Segment. Segment is in essence the Rosetta Stone of APIs. Now, the reason why it's so awesome is the fact that you write one line of JavaScript. That line of JavaScript works directly with Segment. Segment then, of course, translates that into every other tool's native syntax. So I write one line of code, and now all I have to do is I can turn tools on with a flip of a switch in the back end of Segment. This enables me to write code one time, reduce developer implementation, and then I can turn on 3 different analytics tools and they all work great. I can turn on my sales tools, developer tools, and support tools. This is one of the most important things to your stack and will save you a crap ton of time and money from a developer perspective. Now let's move on to something else that's really, really interesting about Segment. There's another company called Clearbit, and what they do is data enrichment. So I give them, in essence, an email, and they're able to give me back other pieces of information about that person. Now, the reason why this is important with Segment is because if you instrument Segment, all you have to do, once again, is turn on the toggle switch for Clearbit, and Clearbit will automatically start enriching any of the information that you send through it. So if somebody signs up for your email list, they only give you their email. Well, Clearbit is going to automatically pass through all their firmographic, demographic, and technographic information back into Segment, enabling you to use that information in all of your other tools. As I explained earlier, Segment integrates with all kinds of stuff, so now you can pass this important information everywhere else. Now, I know I'm going fast, so don't forget, I'm going to send out a high-definition recording of this to make sure that you can keep going along. Now, next, we're going to talk a little bit about Autopilot. Obviously, we're on the line with Autopilot, so I know many of you may be familiar with this one, so we definitely want to talk about it. Now, Autopilot has brought a visual style to marketing automation, but it's also brought a really, really good platform that can do a lot more than just send emails. By building customer journeys, we're actually able to automate in the 21st century and use more than just email to actually impact what we're trying to accomplish. Yes, I can send automated emails, but that's just okay. I want to be able to send text messages, postcards, pop-up automation, and even control other things that are going on. And if you connect it to tools like Zapier and Segment, you can do even more badass shit, which I'll talk about later. Now, I know we're going into Salesforce. Now, I know as a startup founder, Salesforce was scary. It's expensive, it's bulky, it's really big and clunky. But I have to say, now that I've been doing this for so long, I really think Salesforce is an integral part of nearly every single business. Now, I know a lot of people have been scared in the past because it has a bad UI, but recently they came out with a new user interface. It's a little bit easier to use, so definitely check it out. But some of the most important things really aren't the user interface. The App Exchange has one of the largest integrations ecosystem of any platform out there. So it makes it really, really simple to use a CRM and add bolt-on tools to get what you need done. But you should be tracking your leads, your deals, and your customers. If you're not doing that stuff, sorry, you shouldn't be on this webinar. You got other issues to solve. Now, we're going to move on to analytics. If you haven't heard of Amplitude, I recommend you check it out. It is free up to 10 million events, which is really, really cool. Now, one thing that's good about Amplitude is not only the fact is it a normal analytics tool, if you pay for the upgrade, it's also a data science tool that will do data prediction for you. So just focusing on our retention efforts, what we're able to do is basically look at our data and ask what actions do users take that equal to more retention in their second month or their second week. And it does all of this out of the box for you. No hard lifting. You don't need to go hire a data scientist. So definitely something I recommend checking out. Now, the one other really important thing to recognize with Amplitude is that if you're a company that has a SaaS platform with multiple users that are on one account, analytics only tracks those individual users. So if Joe signs up, but Sally comes back and purchases later, you don't see that in your funnel. Your funnel is completely broken because you're tracking those two things independently. With Amplitude, they're the only analytics platform of my knowledge that you can actually do what's known as a group property, and you can actually have Joe and Sally tracked as the same user, and you can actually see that entire funnel. If you have questions about these types of features, just hit me up after the webinar. We can talk more in depth. Now, everybody, it seems like in this webinar, is using Zapier. So I'm not going to explain too much in depth, but one of the best things about Zapier is that you can literally take an action from one system, connect it to another system to create even more action, or string together multiple tools to create all kinds of actions. The popular ones that I have on the screen are great hacks that we've used to be able to pass data from one system into Kissmetrics, which sometimes can be difficult to do. So definitely recommend checking it out because I want you to hack in the 21st century. Now, really quickly here, let's share those results that we had earlier, right? We could see 57% of us had Google Tag Manager, 59% of us had Zapier. So definitely the winners of the tools right now. So really, really good stuff. Now, let's keep moving on, okay? Having tools is one thing, but putting them to use is another, right? Let's review some examples to really get you guys going. Now, we work with a company called RealThread. RealThread is a custom t-shirt printing company. They do online orders, offline orders, and all of those things. So definitely recommend checking them out. Now, really quickly here, I'd love to know, does anybody's company print t-shirts? So for an example, I work at Effin Amazing. We have tons of custom t-shirts made for us. We got LA Laker looking ones. We got black shirts. We got green shirts. I know I have at least 6 Autopilot shirts. I got some weird teal color. I got a black one, a blue one. You print shirts, right, Guy?
We print shirts, especially teal ones.
Right? You got tons of those teal ones. I think I have at least 3 of those. Well, that's awesome. So we got a bunch of people that answered that poll. So let's share those results. It looks about 51% of you don't, right? And this is an interesting thing because I think nothing converts better than a t-shirt, right? You have to have t-shirts with branding on it, get the word out there, let your customers show you off. So definitely all those people that said no, I highly recommend checking it out. Now, let's keep moving forward, okay? So because we want to talk about some real hardcore examples. So when we started working with RealThread, our overarching goal was simple. We need to increase net new customers. We have a good customer base, but we get a shit ton of leads, and we want to convert those leads into new customers, okay? So we don't want to see new orders from current customers. We want to find new customers and bring them into the funnel. Now, we did this by doing 3 separate things, okay? First one, we had to identify how could we implement lead scoring and actually have these people self-qualify themselves. Next, we wanted to take that lead scoring and add personalized journeys to it so we can actually talk directly to these folks and push them farther down the funnel. In the presentation today, I'm not going to show you how to build the personalized journey, but I am going to show you how to hack it and collect the information to create one. It's a really interesting hack. Now, next, we had to improve our overall reporting, which is really, really important. Using this stack, I was able to do some really cool magic, which we'll talk about later. But let's jump into the true problem that they had. This is the problem that we see in most stacks, right? So in RealThread's situation, they have online orders. People come to their website, they're able to add their logo to a shirt, choose different colors, do all kinds of different things. Now, the interesting part is that a lot of these people that fill out the information online, they go through the whole process, they don't actually submit the order for a quote. We collect all their information, we're able to track what they do inside that buyer journey, but we actually aren't able to turn that person into a customer that day. And we have a lot of these online people who are moving around, but we don't necessarily get to see them anywhere else. Now, the next problem is that we have a lot of offline orders. So people come to the website, we are enabling them to basically call us. They can click to call. We as well as enable them to contact us through a form or directly email us. But we have all of these different people that are now coming in offline. We're not tracking them through web analytics when they pick up the phone. So we had to figure out a way, how do we find out what these people are doing? Now, the next problem that we have is a unique one. We get a lot of inbound leads. We're talking over 2,000 emails a month come through some wonderful SEO landing pages. The company has done a great job to build design kits, which help t-shirt designers and people basically design stuff. They enter in their email, they get the downloadable resource, and they basically move on. So we have a lot of these just leads and prospects that are coming in, but they're living in a siloed system. And then last, because the company is sophisticated, they're doing a ton of outbound prospecting. Up to 300 new leads a week are created by their outbound team, which are being stored in an entirely separate system in Saleslofts, right? So if we take these 4 things into consideration, our real problem is that the customers are being tracked in siloed platforms. We literally have no visibility into the customer journey, so we can't really create anything that's going to help these people. Now let's review how this started, okay? When we started working with RealThread, they had at least some of the tools that we liked. They had Segment in place. We don't mind Intercom. Kissmetrics does a pretty good job. They had Salesforce, which we really liked, but it was in its own little island. And then Salesloft, which they were using for prospecting, once again lived in its own island. So as a lead or a prospect would come in through Segment for downloading a resource, it would live in Intercom, but it would never go anywhere else. We would track it in Kissmetrics, but it would never go anywhere else. If somebody picked up the phone and called us, it went into Salesforce, but we never knew that they existed in our automation tools. And if somebody was outbound prospected, we never even knew they existed. So we could be outbound prospecting current customers and causing nightmares. We could have current customers that wind up in Intercom, or we're sending them spam because it's not integrated. So definitely a big problem. Now, if we continue to move on, right, let's talk about how we change their stack, right? We've already covered what most of these tools do. But if this looks simple to you, I want to hire you. If this looks complicated, we need to talk and help you out and figure this out. Now, we'll notice on the far left-hand side, we have Segment. Segment is basically the center of our data piping. We are using Tag Manager, but I've removed it from this slide because it's not as important, but Segment is our data piping. This passes data down through all of these tools. Now, some of these tools are directly connected through Segment, but all of the data is able to pass through all of these tools in this manner. So for an example, when data passes into Segment, it also hits Clearbit, but Clearbit has the power to send data back into Segment, which enables us to get it into other tools. Another important one is that Autopilot, we can send data into it, and it as well can send data back into Segment, which enables us to see this in our other tools as well. Now, the greatest part that I really like is the fact that Autopilot is completely integrated with Salesforce, and these things have a one-to-one sync and everything matches. You do have to do some custom field creation, but really, really simple. But these do have a complete match, which enables me to send custom Salesforce stuff into Segment and into the rest of my tools. Now, as I said earlier, we had a lot of phone calls coming in, so we implemented CallRail. We had SalesLoft, which we integrated into Salesforce. We wanted to make sure those prospects wound up in the right tool. And then also, we wanted to make sure that we could track all of our activities in Salesforce and get passed over to our analytics tools, which we leverage some custom hackery I'll show you later. Now, we did use Zapier. We didn't get rid of Intercom entirely. We still use their on-site chat. But the problem is that on-site chat, once again, isn't really connected to anything. So we had to use Zapier to pump those leads into Autopilot, which turns them into leads in Salesforce. So we're still able to close that entire loop. Now, let's get into some really, really cool stuff, okay? This is a great slide, but I want to talk about the things that we had to really accomplish. So we had to complete three main things. First one being lead scoring. We had to turn thousands of prospects a month into MQLs, marketing qualified leads. Now, to do this, lead scoring should be based upon behavior and identity attributes. A lot of people just base it upon the identity attributes, like, hey, there's a VP of marketing and things like that. I would highly recommend making sure you take into consideration your behavior as well. Now, I want to stress, this isn't just for B2B companies. This is for B2C companies as well. So if you have a B2C company, you should be doing lead scoring and engagement scoring of your users to make sure that you can track them. Now, let's show you how we do this. On the left-hand side of the screen, I'm showing Tag Manager, okay? This is how we implemented the code on our site so we could actually track the people and without actually talking to a developer. The right-hand side, I have Segment pulled up. This is their live view debugger. Now, what you'll notice is as I start completing actions on the left side, you'll start to notice that things will move down on the right side. This means that events are being sent into Segment and then, of course, passing into my other tools. Now, we set up a lot of tracking through Tag Manager so we can track our users. So did they view a shirt? Did they view a color? Did they add something to their cart? What are the things that happen? So as something is added to the cart, we send an event which tells us all of the information about that product or the cart or what exactly is going on. Now I know which shirt color they chose. I know they added it to their cart. And I can also set up logic so later I actually know that they didn't purchase that and I can send them more important messages. Now, to just keep moving on, this is how we track the behavior. So we're sending those events into segments, which are then sent to the rest of our tools. Now, let's talk about the flip side of that. We have a lot of leads which come in through those SEO pages. We know nothing about them. So we integrated Segment with Clearbit, and what happens is Clearbit automatically enriches every record that comes back in and then sends that data back into Clearbit. So for an example, somebody downloaded that resource, and then of course, once that happened, it was sent back a big bunch of code, which of course has all their demographic, firmographic, and technographic information. Now this is really helpful because Clearbit passes it into Segment, which enables us to put it anywhere else we like. Now, once this information is of course passed from Segment into the rest of our tools like Autopilot, Autopilot is able to store all this information. Now I'll talk about creating the mapping later, but you want to understand that all the data you send to Segment can be populated into Autopilot, including the entire activity history of that user. And if you also have Autopilot integrated with Salesforce and all the correct field mapping set up as well, you'll be able to see all of these attributes on the Salesforce lead, contact, or even account level to make sure that you have a full view of this customer. Really, really important stuff. Now, I know that I kind of went past how to set this up, but we're going to jump into that right now. So let's look at exactly how we would do this. If you're a Salesforce user, hopefully you know how to create a custom field. But if you don't, you just come to setup, go to customize, and then you want to create a new field on the lead tab. Now, by doing this, we're in essence giving ourselves a place to store this data. Really, really simple stuff. So in this use case, you'll notice that I need to go in and create a number field, so that way we can actually have a score there. If you use a text field, it's not going to take numbers as well, so make sure that you use numbers. Now, why this is important is because if we don't have the field in existence in Salesforce, we can't actually get the field to map from Autopilot over to Salesforce. We'll do all of our lead scoring in Autopilot, but we must make sure that this stuff is set up and visible to our people in Salesforce as well. Now, once I've completed this process, the next thing that I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to jump over to Autopilot and make sure that everything is synced, connected, and as well as mapped. So you'll notice that we have our field mapping section where I've mapped all of our fields from Salesforce over to our Autopilot fields. If you haven't already created the field in Autopilot, you do need to create it, but you can map the fields one-to-one. So you'll notice that if we have a lead scored field in Autopilot, it is now directly mapped over to our field in Salesforce. This way we can keep them in sync. Now, to create a lead score in Autopilot is super awesome. It's actually really, really easy. Now, as we send data into Autopilot, you'll notice that we can actually update specific fields. So as Clearbit sends in data, we have an operational journey which updates a field and imports that data. When that field is changed in Autopilot, though, we can actually change the lead score field and actually increase it by 20% if it matches. Now, we can do this based upon a lot of identity information. It makes it really, really easy for us to do. So if you're a VP of marketing, I increase by 10. If you're in the right industry, say you're in the textiles industry, I can increase by 50 if you're the right person. But the most important part to me is the fact that we can also take our segment events, the true actions these users are doing on our site, and also create a lead score. So for an example, I downloaded a resource. That user should get a new lead score. We should increase it by 10. Now, let's say this user comes in, they download a resource, they're the VP of marketing, they work in textiles. Every one of these fields is going to start increasing that value of the user, and the lead score is going to start to bubble them to the top. And for this client, we had to create marketing qualified leads. So if we're trying to create an MQL, right, we need to have a score limit. So after you hit 150 points, you will be shown as an MQL where a sales rep can then accept or reject your lead. And of course, we add very, very interesting information to these people. So we can see the list view here, but if we were to look at an individual lead, we can also see how we've mapped over all of the data that we've learned. So for an example, this is my record. I have a 120 score. I've moved over all of my title and all that information. Now, to go back to the B2C comment we had earlier, there's some interesting things that you can do with these lead scoring objects, right? You don't have to always set them up as lead score. You can really set these up in any way you like. So for an example, I want to know the number of times somebody has visited my pricing page. I can set that up as an event and segment, pass it to Autopilot, create an operational journey to then pass those values into Salesforce. This enables you to then create automation in Salesforce to make your sales reps aware, or your sales reps can even just use that as information when they are researching to find new leads. Now, I know some of you may have questions. Please put those in that chat box. We'll jump to some at the end, but let's keep moving on. This has been really helpful. So as part of our goal to increase net new customers, we needed to do lead scoring. I just showed you how to do that using Autopilot in Salesforce. If you need help getting that done, reach out to the Autopilot team or myself, and we'd be happy to show you how the custom lead scoring works. Now, the next step was to create personalized journeys. Now, this is an interesting thing because when you have a lot of leads coming in, you need to figure out a way to talk to them. And by creating a lot of personalization, you can have a one-to-one conversation, which increases your chance of a conversion. So we needed to turn those hundreds of qualified leads that we created into sales qualified leads so the sales reps would talk to them, right? The sales reps can reject things, and then we need to work it through. Now, the way that you're going to want to do this first is to create a personalized journey draft. Okay, this is using a tool called Real-Time Board, which enables us to basically just outline all the things we're looking to accomplish, decide what do we need to actually personalize on. Are we going to do this based upon their industry? Are we going to do this based upon their role? Are we going to try to tailor things to gender if I'm an e-commerce company? You need to create that draft on your own. So figure that out, work with your team, create some cool personalization stuff, and create some journeys. And that will help you figure out what data you need to collect to make that actually happen. Now, in today's presentation, I'm not going to show you how to create the journey. What I am going to do is show you the hack and how to get your users to self-identify who they are if you can't get that information elsewhere. Now let's walk you through this process and how we're going to do it in Autopilot. I have a lot of users that sign up for my site and don't tell me who they are, right? They sign up, they give me their email, Clearbit doesn't enrich them. So I've created a custom journey for all of those users to get a welcome email from us. As those users fill out that form, they get their resources, they then get shot over an email. In that email, we then ask them to describe what is their role. And when a user clicks on this, we drive them directly back to our website. You'll notice that we use UTM tags to really be able to get them to store that data on our website. This enables us to understand what roles in Google Analytics and Kissmetrics and Amplitude, all through their native tracking. But it also allows us to create some other hackery. Now, once they click that link, they'll end up on our website where we have other tracking set up through Autopilot to really help us do this. Now, let's move on to the next step where I show you how we actually track this once they get to the website. This is another hack that we built through Autopilot, which enables us to do some cool stuff. So Autopilot has the ability for us to know when somebody viewed a page, and we can use that as a trigger to kick off a journey. So if somebody came to that page that we had set up and was using these specific UTMs that we had set up, what we can do is use that as a trigger to update a field. So they visited the page, and then we assigned a new field called role, and we updated that field to then have whatever role they had decided. Now, this is super, super helpful because now I have a way to understand who is in what role in Autopilot, and I can pass this on to any other tool using Salesforce or Segment. Now, let me show you how this looks for the user, okay? Because that's probably the most important experience. We don't want to interrupt the user's experience. We want to make it beautiful. So when we have these folks fill out this lead form, they submit it, they get their resource in their inbox, they're immediately going to get this beautiful email saying, hey, welcome to the family. We want to send you tailored content because we care. Just click on one of these little buttons and we'll make sure that you get content you care about. They get back to the website, they're thanked for responding. This is a great place to offer an incentive such as buy now and get 50% off. And you can really choose what those types of discounts are. But the important part is now that I know this information, I can now send tailored messages. I can make sure that the graphic designers get the information they care about. Meanwhile, the designer for an apparel company who cares about different things, we can send them tailored content and create customized journeys for just them. And last, the business owner, right? They have different needs, different use cases. We want to make sure that we can send them personalized content that helps get them through the funnel. Now, I understand that this is really, really important for every business. So I want you to steal this growth hack that we've used across a lot of companies to get that information so you can create your personalized journeys. Now, we've accomplished how you can collect the information to create that personalized journey, okay? I leave it up to you to come up with what content and information you want to send them at what cadence. If you need help, I know Guy and Annie would be happy to help you set up a personalized nurture journey. But let's move on to my favorite part of the conversation, okay? The next thing that we had to do was improve reporting, right? We had to create analytics integration to give leadership data more information about what their customer is doing. Now, this is really, really helpful. We need to know what customers are doing so we can make better decisions in the business. Now, the problem is it's not always easy to get that data into analytics. But what I was really surprised about, and the reason why I fell in love with Autopilot, was the ability to take this information and send it anywhere I want. So in our last example, we showed you how a user could tell me who they are and their role they basically use. We had a page visit, it updated a field in Autopilot, but what I could also do is send that as an event back into Segment. Now, why is this important? Well, Segment enables me to send any information to any of one of my other tools, which makes it very, very effective. So not only do I know that this person is a fashion designer in Autopilot and in Salesforce, but I can also measure that in a myriad of other tools. Now, for the example today, I'm going to show you how to do that in Autopilot, or excuse me, in Amplitude. If I was to go into Amplitude and want to create a segmentation report and understand the people that answered that survey, and then see how that broke down over time or even by usage, I could create a simple report that shows me whether they're unique or event totals, and actually see a graph on how many people had classified them as a designer compared to a business owner or any of the other things. Now, you'll notice that I kind of hid some of the metrics on this screen, but hey, this still gives you an example of how you can take that information you learned in Autopilot and pass that right on through to your other tools so you can add it to your other analytics data sets. Now, if there's any other nerds in this meeting, I definitely want to chat with you about how you can use this data to create different dimensions of your funnel and really optimize. Now, one thing I want to make sure I mention as well is not only did I get to pass this into Amplitude, but because I connected it through Segment, I also passed this information at the same exact time into Kissmetrics. I didn't have to write up another integration in syntax. I didn't have to integrate two tools. I just integrated Segment, and automatically the data appears in both of my tools. So in this report, I want to understand how many people actually answered the question and told us what their role was. So we can very quickly run a report in Kissmetrics, just like we did in Amplitude, leveraging the same exact data. And then I can even break this down and try to understand a little bit more about what users are answering what questions. And I can later use this information as well for better targeting. Now, I know we've gone through this example quickly, so if you need more help, don't be afraid to ask questions. We're definitely here to serve you. Now, over this presentation, I've taught you a lot about different tools that you can use, but I can't teach you everything in one single webinar, right? There's a lot of stuff I could cover, and I know I'm going fast. But we did cover some really important stuff. We've taught you how to do some lead scoring using Salesforce and Autopilot and creating operational journeys in there. I taught you how to collect information about your users in a passive manner, which creates great user experience and enables you to create a new nurture journey. And last, I taught you how to do some interesting reporting so you can track what's happening in your CRM, your marketing automation tool, and then pass that over into your analytics tool. But I have one more bonus that I just cannot hold from sending out, right? This is one of my favorite things that I was able to build, which is causing some really, really good ruckus inside of our organization. Now, what we wanted to do was understand how a lead would come down our web funnel, and then how does that actually work in Salesforce? So can we track our sales stages, which are in Salesforce, inside of our analytics tool? So as I build this funnel in Amplitude, you'll notice that I'm viewing all products. I then view a product. The person's then going to look at a product color, but potentially abandon. At this point, we have a lot of people disappear, but we've collected their information. They've been passed into Salesforce, and we started running lead scoring. Now, the lead scoring will take somebody from an unqualified lead to a qualified lead. So what I want to understand in this funnel is how many people enter our funnel, do not purchase, but are later converted into a marketing qualified lead, so we can measure the effectiveness of what is actually happening. So as we can see, we can measure each step of that funnel, and also see in the last step, we created over 236 qualified leads based upon all of the different stages of that funnel. Now, this is really, really powerful because that lead status only changes in Salesforce. But by using the features in Autopilot, I can track the change of a field and then send an event into analytics and really track that. Now, this is a nerdy topic here, and I'd love to dig in deep if somebody wanted to have a follow-on call to talk about that. So definitely really, really good stuff there. Now, the one piece of advice that I have for everybody, right, is make sure that your stack is run by good people, right? Your stack is only going to be as run as by the cool people that you have running it, right? So don't be stupid. You want to do cool shit. So make sure that you hire the right people to basically run your stack. Now, I would love to schedule some time to talk with as many of you as possible. So if you can do me a favor, if you're interested in scheduling a free consultation with me to review your marketing stack, your sales stack, or just pick my brain about how we can make your business even better, do me a favor, drop a yes in there. I'll send you over my calendar, and we can talk a little bit more about this later. Now, I'm going to bring Guy back into the conversation because I've just been talking up a storm over here. How you doing, Guy?
I'm good. I'm loving this. And we have an active audience who's asking questions throughout. So great presentation so far.
Yeah, and I apologize for going so quick if I was going too fast for anybody, but I wanted to try to make sure I got all three of those hacks in there for everybody. Now,
absolutely.
Guy, you have a wonderful offer going on here. What's this all about?
We're in the business of generating leads as well, to be completely blatantly obvious. So, we are doing a special offer for anybody who joined today. We don't typically do this, but get 50% off your first 6 months for up to a 10,000 contact plan if you add this Effin Amazing code in there. So this will be available for everybody, and this is valid through the end of September this year.
That's awesome. I wish I would have taken advantage of that a while ago. I'm also going to send that out in an email to remind everybody. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, Guy, I know that you were able to moderate some of the questions that were going on. I think now's a great time for questions. You ready to kick that off?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, sounds good. Well, what have you got? What's going down?
So a lot of questions around tool. One thing that's interesting that came up, I'd love to hear your take on this, is Sunil said, I know how to use all these tools. I've evaluated every single tool mentioned except for Salesforce. What should I do to convince my boss to start using tools for growth? I asked him lots of times, and I know it's not the question here, but like many, I see this as a problem for lots of startups.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is creating a business case around it. I mean, a lot of times what we focus on is what is the business case and how is this going to impact the bottom line? If you can do a cost-benefit analysis of a campaign which is going to increase revenue, and you can back that out into what tool is going to be required to do it, that's going to be the easiest way to talk to your boss. I am one of those bosses, and I reject tools all the time. But if somebody shows me the amount of money I'm going to make by buying this tool, the return on investment, I'm way more likely to pick it out and buy it.
Absolutely. That's a good point. So the business case, I mean, one thing we do with a lot of customers, and we're going to put a little web tool around this, is, there are some general rule of thumbs, number of contacts in your database. You should be able to reactivate anywhere from 1.5 to 3% of those per year. And if you convert those leads into customers at say 15% with your average sales price, that is net new revenue that you'll generate just by reactivating those forgotten leads. And it's something that we've done repeatedly in webinars in the past with companies like Instapage and our own internal testing, and it's a consistent revenue generator. So there's various other things you can do there, but there are actually hard metrics you can use to generate sort of revenue goals coming out of personalized nurturing.
Absolutely. I mean, the most interesting thing is that with, for an example, RealThread, that lead scoring feature, we are generating 300 to 500 qualified leads a month, which is keeping sales extremely busy. And that is a huge plus for the business, and the fact that they're now able to identify what is a good lead out of those 2,000 prospects.
Exactly. There's another element to this as well. I was chatting last year at the CMO Live Chat, the SaaS live chat service. Is based over in Poland. They have a huge number of customers, and they've been using automation from early on. And his message is, they wouldn't have been able to sustain the growth they have with a pretty small team had they not had a lot of automated sort of journeys in place, both pre and post sale, and through the full life cycle for retention without that in place. So there's an element of just pure scaling growth these days that automation really powers.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. And there's so for an example, Segment is actually, excuse me, Segment actually reduces the amount of developers you need to keep a stack up to date. It's actually very, very expensive. When I was back at Code School, we estimated it cost us roughly $60,000 to integrate Kissmetrics and Mixpanel. And each of those had to be done as their own native integration. Then we had to connect Intercom. Then we had to connect all these other things. If we would have connected through Segment, we probably would only have spent about $20,000 to $25,000 in developer time to actually get that up to date and get it going, because those tools are already integrated with Segment. And then the follow-on maintenance is even easier, because you're just keeping one syntax code base up to date compared to trying to keep 7 different syntaxes up to date in your code base. So tools even like Segment reduce the number of developers you need, which is a huge savings for a startup.
Got it. So Dan, question for you. Someone's asking, how do we build those business cases fast? Any hacks, any quick wins, any quick responses? Have you come across those?
As in building the business case on why you should use a tool?
Yeah, maybe, invest in the stack, I suppose, is really what the theme is. Any sort of quick wins or hacks that you've developed that, if you're speaking to a skeptical founder, has sort of had their eyes light up?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is to reverse engineer it, right, around a campaign. Is you shouldn't be focused on just picking a tool because the tool is going to do something. You actually have to have the plan of what the tool is going to do for you. So I recommend to say, hey, we can't build this campaign unless we have this tool, and this campaign is expected to give us 2x return. Focus it around the revenue that is going to be generated on a campaign. If you're doing this for marketing, focus it around that campaign.
Perfect.
Now, I want to add, I saw another question come through, somebody said, can I speak about multinational marketing for B2B? And I definitely think that's a really, really interesting subject, but I definitely have to say, from a multinational perspective with B2B marketing, a lot of that has to happen in Salesforce, because you can zone people to territories, and you really need to make sure that that is mirrored into your marketing automation tool, because you want each multinational area to obviously have its personalized information for that territory, its language, and things like that. But typically in the world, that starts inside of your CRM, and then your CRM pumps that down into your other tools to make sure they know the territory.
Nice. I'm just reading back through these questions here. I think a couple points that we've typically seen, it is nice to have hacks that you can do. One great one we learned and came across a while back is, I'm not sure how many people on the call or in the webinar today do NPS surveys of your customers, which is how likely you recommend a friend or a colleague to your service. And the net promoters of those who respond 9 and 10, a really quick, easy win that actually works quite effectively is if a customer is a net promoter. So you run a survey with an app like Delighted. If they respond back and say 9 or 10, zap that into Autopilot, recognize those as promoters, and instantly follow up with a response from your CEO saying, would you mind referring us or reviewing us quickly on Yelp or GetApp or G2 Crowd? It can be a terrific way to build out your online reviews, which of course are highly trusted and can be a great source of qualified leads.
I have another hack to that as well. I love Delighted. I think it does a great job, but because I use Autopilot, I can create that same exact Delighted email and copy and take all that stuff and then track it directly in Autopilot and save the money and not paying for Delighted. Don't get me wrong, I love the guys. But I can do that same thing in Autopilot and make all the magic happen in one place and only pay for one tool. I think that's really awesome to be able to do. Just set it up the same way that I had that welcome email.
Nice. Yes, that's even better. Save money.
Right?
Another question, how do you do retargeting using Facebook custom audiences with the stack? Do you use other integrations like LeadsBridge?
No, so the main thing that we do with those custom pixels is we actually use the Facebook pixel from Segment. So whenever we're trying to set that stuff up, we set up the custom pixels and conversions using the Segment integration and try to just use the pixels through there because you can track that across multiple stuff. I'm not familiar. What was the tool that was mentioned though?
He mentioned LeadsBridge.
I'm not familiar with. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that either.
Anyway, so the answer there is Segment, which has lots of integrations. Someone here earlier asked, and it's over 200.
Yeah, it's nearly 300 now.
Yeah, over 300 apps.
It's crazy. And then if you pair that, and I'm bummed that Segment doesn't have an integration with Zapier yet. I would love it. You can kind of hack it through their webhooks, which we've seen before, but I really wish they would come out with a standard integration so you could pipe data from Zapier into Segment when needed.
Got it. All right, so here's a question that came through. Somebody said, can you detect if someone responds to an email and stop future automated emails? I'm getting too many emails from people at Autopilot, myself being one of them. It's a fair question. Yes, you can. We have two aspects. One, there's an eject shape, which is if any member of an active journey falls into a smart segment, such as they purchase or they attend a page or they register or they complete the goal for that journey, you can auto eject them. And then secondly, you can also use a condition check prior to a send to exclude members of specific lists or segments as well. And obviously this is a work in progress to always improve. We did, for the journey of this particular webinar today, actually use a different method that unfortunately excluded some people who should have been included in some of our suppressions. So if you received one too many emails from me, that was due to a new method we were using in Autopilot. So apologies for that. But there are a lot of ways to maintain control there. But obviously that is one of the challenges for the automation tools in general.
Now, this is really interesting. So because earlier in the presentation, I talked about how we're tracking lead stages in Salesforce in Autopilot and then sending events to other tools. The reason why that lead stage or lead status is so important to us and why we need it to be tracked is it's used as an ejection reason for almost all of our journeys. So if you sign up through one of those landing pages, you're right now entered into the system as maybe an unqualified or a qualified lead. But if we nurture you to the point where you respond back to one of the Salesforce reps, one of the account executives' emails, that account executive, as soon as they get that email, then goes and updates the lead in Salesforce to now say working. As soon as Autopilot sees that any lead is working, it ejects them from all journeys and waits for that Salesforce record to either go back to nurture or I think a junk lead or become a contact before we're allowed to send them an email again. And the whole point is salespeople should have a one-to-one conversation. Marketing shouldn't be sending them emails while sales is trying to close the deal. And using that status change is really, really helpful.
Perfect. The last question there was, if someone responds to an email, the answer is yes. You can also do on email, if they respond, you could exclude them or eject them from the journey as well, which is a relatively new feature from Autopilot.
And just to add to that, I don't mean to promote other email tools. If you're really looking to send emails and stop the automation when somebody replies, tools like Mixmax are a lot better, let's say, for outbound prospecting emails or for flows like that, just because it's coming through your Gmail SMTP. Autopilot does a great job for market automation, but not the best tool for doing like outbound stuff where when somebody replies, you want the thread to turn off. It can be used that way, but Guy, I don't think that's what you guys built it for.
Correct. Yeah, we're really more built for an inbound nurture system that speaks with Salesforce and then interacts with, and then excludes based on uptick of specific emails. Our sales teams here use Mixmax also for the outbound piece.
I love it. I have Mixmax hacked in with Salesforce and Autopilot. We could do a webinar just on that. We have some great hacks with Mixmax and all that.
So Dan, another good question for you. How do you keep up and test the latest martech?
Awesome question. And this is kind of funny. My response may not be what you want to hear. We actually are the laggards in many situations. So, for an example, Amplitude, we refused to look at it for their first 2 years in business just because we knew they were immature at that point. And I'm not saying immature is in a bad way, but like they just hadn't grown enough for us to really pay attention. Autopilot is another case of that. I literally didn't care about Autopilot for almost 2 years. And people tried to sell me, and I'm like, I'm not interested. We had a need, we needed lead scoring, and they launched lead scoring the week before we needed it, and we found it, and we started digging in more. I typically am 1 to 2 years a little bit behind because I want tools to have maturity. I want to know that they're not going to die. I want to know that I've already proved them. But for the new stuff, I mean, a lot of people contact me from sales. That's really, I would say, the way that I stay on top of everything is the sales reps won't leave me alone. But a lot of it is just following along on Product Hunt. I mean, Product Hunt is a great tool for learning about new products. And I get the email every day. I check it out every day. I see what's being hunted. So I would have to say, other than just ignoring all the sales emails, I check Product Hunt.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I would say I stay in touch with both my social feeds. I'm pretty heavy on Twitter. Product Hunt is great. And then, I get the benefit of talking to lots of customers. You're constantly throwing integration requests and new tools in. I really like your comment around, I think it's important to invest in constant dabbling and experimentation. So you run a little labs and try new tools. But in terms of your core stack, like you said, the key with building out a long-term growth plan is to evolve and commit to an iterative evolution process. So while our internal team has that 20 plus tool stack in your initial survey, that was not invented in a day. Like we've been evolving that for years now. Mm-hmm. And when we get to the point where we need a new tool, we'll invest, we'll evaluate the entire space, and then pick one of them. And that's only once we've got a real problem that we've got to solve.
Yeah, we definitely do a lot of validation. It takes a while. But hey, listen, when we started using Autopilot, we brought some awesome customers over to them. So like when we like something, we're all in.
Great. All right, so speak to using Autopilot for lightweight BPM, so business process management, workflows with credit card processing, work assignments to distributed workers. So Autopilot at its core is an orchestration engine that allows you to trigger action and condition. So although we primarily are focused on the marketing use cases, you can certainly trigger anything based on smart segments, and whatever systems you're syncing into Autopilot, you could then use field value changes or list memberships or anything to trigger an internal operational journey, as we call them. So you could update a field value in another system, you could send an internal notification, and then be able to, in doing so, sort of send assignments to distributed workers. So it's certainly something to look into. It's a very flexible platform to support a lot of use cases.
We use it for a lot of workflow management. So
workflow, yeah, you mentioned this, Dan, at the last Growth Marketing Conference.
Yeah, when we have issues with leads getting imported incorrectly, instead of having to use a tool like Data Loader at IO, we'll actually run a workflow or operational journey in Autopilot to update initial lead source or to make sure people are at the right lead status and stuff like that. So we use it for a lot of just moving data around, updating fields, sending data from one tool to another. We actually used it to send, in essence, an ETL from Autopilot into Segment to update records that were in our analytics tools. It really can be used in all kinds of great ways, and I'm a hacker, so I love it.
Yeah. On that note, there's a question: is there any way to learn more about how to hack UTM parameters? I'm used to using them for acquisition, but it sounded like Dan had some other suggestions.
Well, that brings me to a great poll, which I'm going to ask really quickly. Who in this webinar uses UTMs? Because I'm very, very passionate about UTMs. UTMs can be used to be hacked in Autopilot and analytics tool alike. Unfortunately, with UTMs, you do have to follow a specific standard, so that way it works with all tools. But I would highly recommend using UTMs to do all kinds of cool actions, not even in just Autopilot, but other tools. So for an example, the way that it's built in our Autopilot instance, if you visit my website, the first time that you come, we actually store if you came from a UTM. If you came to our website and you did not come from a UTM, we store in that field, we put null. But if you came from a UTM, we actually store that UTM string. You have to predetermine what UTM it is. And then we store that as the initial lead source, not only in Autopilot, but also Salesforce, and then pass that through to analytics. So that way we're able to see that UTM everywhere. I am very happy to see, though, over 52% of you are using UTM, so really, really good stuff. You need to be making sure that you're using that in your emails. Really, really important stuff there.
And just so everyone understands, the way the Autopilot tracking our JavaScript pixel works is from the moment you cookie your users, anytime they click any URL which contains a UTM, that's actually captured by the Autopilot system, and you can create smart segments for inclusion or exclusion of any of those UTMs, which in turn you can use to trigger and segment your contacts.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So one last question. We're coming up to the hour here. I'm starting from a blank slate, Dan. What are the first 3 tools to bring in?
Absolutely. One, I would definitely see if you can start out with Segment, because that will enable your integration for everything. I would also recommend Google Tag Manager, so you can deploy things quickly. I'm going to give you 4 tools, but depending on your business, obviously you want to make sure that you have the right marketing automation tool, which I would recommend Autopilot. Really, really important to have that set up, because you need to be able to understand your customers and talk to them. Email is the most effective channel. It drives huge return on investment, so you want to make sure that you have that set up. But I would also just say Zapier, because you're going to need to be hacky if you're just starting from a blank canvas. So get really familiar with that and their ecosystem, because it will enable you to do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said just then, I mean, it's mind blown compared to 5 years ago, right? So Google Tag Manager, you can add anything to any site, anywhere in your site. Segment is over 200 apps. You can pass data between them, pull reports, connect into third-party systems, trigger off of events, and personalized messaging with apps like Autopilot. And then with Zapier, like Autopilot for today, for example, we're pulling, actually for typical events we do, if you hold a meetup, for example, you can zap from a meetup registration form with Eventbrite into Autopilot and trigger a journey. So between those 4 you mentioned, you can pretty much run an organization with one marketer or one growth person that would have taken 5 or 10 people in the past.
Yeah, you can hack all kinds of stuff. I love it. You can reduce automation is amazing. I love it.
All right. Well, Dan, this has been awesome. High energy, full of info, and I appreciate the audience's questions. We've had a very engaged group today. So thank you very much for running this today, Dan, and it's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me, and I look forward to chatting to everybody soon. And if anybody has any questions, just hit me up later and we'll chat soon.
Sounds good. And everyone in the audience, you can look for that follow-up emails. There'll be a recording of today, and we'll have plenty of action on Twitter if you want to engage and ask any further questions too. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.